Welcome to Easy Style with Sammy. I'm your host, Sammy Bedell-Mulhern. Each episode, I invite a friend, family member, colleague, or just someone I've met on this journey called life to come and share their personal style and approach to business, parenting, life, and everything in between. You'll hear motivational and inspirational stories that will help you refine and build your own personal style. Remember, style is easy when it comes from within. Hello. Welcome to another episode of Easy Style with Sammy. My guest today is Susan Larimer. Susan, thank you for being here.
Hey, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, so Susan and I met. I always say this all the time about how much I love direct sales because of the amazing humans that I've had the pleasure of meeting. And so we met through a program called Modern Direct Seller. And I think we just got along right away and have just connected ever since the beginning of, it's probably been almost a year or two.
I've been in the academy for like 2.5 years. And I remember being on a Zoom and you had your camera off because you usually
Always
do have your camera off on those. But I was listening to you and I'm like, oh my gosh, like she is my new go-to person for all things tech. And I'm like, I need to connect with her.
Yeah. Well, and that's what I love about it is like we can all find different people that can complement our needs and our skill set. So like everybody kind of brings something to the table in their own little way. And so I think that's fantastic. Well, before we get too much into this episode, why don't you share a little bit about who Susan Larimer is?
Ooh, okay. So, Susan Larimer. I currently live in southern New Jersey. We actually just moved here from 17 years in the Cincinnati, Ohio area, but we are originally from Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. We also spent a year in La Paz, Mexico, serving as missionaries. My husband is a pastor, so I am a pastor's wife, although I hate that label because don't get me started on that. I want to be your friend, Susan, not the pastor's wife. So we have 2 teenagers. My daughter is a junior in high school. She is 17. And our son is a freshman. He is 15. So lots going on. I'm in the direct sales world, which is how I connected with Sammy. I've been in direct sales I've been with Lemongrass Spa for, 8 years, but in direct sales total for 10 years. So I love it. I was a speech therapist for 17 years. So I was in the healthcare world. And in 2018, I resigned as a speech therapist. Very hard decision, but I needed to spend more time with my family. My kids were getting older and I knew, there would come a day where they wouldn't want to hang out with mom anymore. And I did not want to miss out on those years. So in 2018, I resigned as a speech therapist, did direct sales full time. And here I am, 5 years later, still doing direct sales and loving the life that we have built for our family.
That has been such a common theme on this podcast with everybody, not even just in direct sales, but just in talking about how our careers and our choices have changed in different seasons of life. So I think that's it's interesting common thread from young kids to now that they're older to then what do we do as empty nesters, all of the things, because you're only a few years away from having an empty household. Oh, sorry.
It's so funny because I had a post not too long ago about my son's shoes and they're sitting there in the exact same spot right now. And I'm looking at his shoes and I'm like, oh my gosh, you left your shoes out again. But then I'm like, okay, a couple years, his shoes won't be out anymore. And I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm just thankful that I've had so much time together. As a family, we eat dinner together every night. We are a very close family. And when you talk to other kids, like my kids have friends over and they're like, we don't have dinner together. Like we never do that. And I'm like, what? Like you don't realize that you're doing something differently because you've always done it that way. That's how I was raised too. So yeah, I don't want to talk about empty nest things.
That's fair. That's fair. Well, and that's a perfect segue into like why I wanted to have you on today was because you are so good at making connections with people that are real and genuine. You portray in your business your connection with your family and how real and authentic that is. So I guess I just wanted to start off with like, are you a natural connector? Like, have you always been that way? Like growing up, were you like always trying to mix and match and find the right people to connect with the right people and to connect with you? Or is that something you kind of excelled in later as you kind of got into your adult life?
I don't know. I was trying to think about that. I remember as a kid always having friends over and always over to my house. And I remember my mom saying, like, why don't your friends ever invite you to their houses? Like, why is everyone always coming here? And I'd never really thought about it, but I just love spending time with people. So I'm just like, yeah, come over, come over, come over. And it's funny because my husband is very much an introvert, and his home is his kingdom. And
Mm.
when people are in his kingdom too long, he's like, I gotta go. Like, I'm going to Home Depot. I'm going, like, he doesn't love it. So I always want people over, and I have to be very, what? I have to be very cautious and thinking about his feelings too, and not constantly having people over or not allowing them to stay all day, all night, week after week, whatever. So,
We
but
are
yeah,
the
I
same
was
in this
always been,
household. At
yeah.
our old house in Oregon, we had lots of kids that lived on our street, and I worked from home. So in the summers, like around 3 o'clock, all the kids would just be out in the street. We were farther down from the main road, so everybody would hang out in our driveway. And my husband would come home from work every day, pre-COVID, and there'd be like 4 adults in the driveway and all the kids running around, and he's like, I need to like decompress. Like he would just go straight inside for like 20-30 minutes, and he'd be like, can you not do that like every night of the week? Can you maybe like so I totally
You get
understand
it.
you. Yeah, I totally understand you there. um so kind of how do you think though that natural ability of chatting with people and building relationships, like how has that kind of helped you through like your career and kind of, I mean, as a speech pathologist, like that's all about connection and communication.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I think, in my speech therapy world, I always worked with older adults. I was in nursing homes, I was in rehab facilities working with stroke victims. And I always recognized the wisdom and the life experiences that these people have had. And it was always such a gift to me to be able to spend time with them, get to know them and their families. I think that's why I never went into the hospital world with speech therapy, because they're in and out, in and out. Like I like to know people for weeks, sometimes months at a time, and just form that relationship. And as a pastor's wife, too, you know, we're all about relationships. And I recognize that more and more the older I get. In church, it's all about relationships. In direct sales, it's all about relationships. You can't go up to someone and say, "Oh, like smell my lotion. Are you ready to buy it?" Like you have to have a relationship with people in order to gain that trust, that know, like, and trust. In order to, and that's how your business grows. And the business growing to me is just a bonus. Like now
Mm.
that I've learned how to connect with my customers and they've been with me for a number of years, I love when I'm invited to like a group chat where someone's like, "Okay, I have back surgery coming up. You are my prayer warriors. Like I know you've been keeping up with me and you follow up." And I never met this person in person. I never met them.
Yeah.
He was in New York. I live in New Jersey, but we have this relationship. Like we're genuine friends and we genuinely care about each other. So that to me is the greatest part of, being a Christian, being a pastor's wife, being in a church, and being in the business that we're in.
Hmm. Well, I think when you lead with that forward, people can feel it. Like people can feel desperation of like, well, you're just trying to sell me on something. And
Yeah.
I'm curious too, because 17 years in Cincinnati, and now you're in a new community, in a new church. Like, do you think having that same core value helped you to enter into that church and rebuild make new relationships and kind of serve your community more comfortably?
Yes. And it's interesting because where we moved to now, we vacationed here every single year, our entire lives. So we already have relationships here. So now that we moved here, yes, we're in a new church. We didn't know anyone in our new church, but we have the local relationships that now we're integrating with our church. And I always say, like, when my worlds collide, that is just, I get so excited when I have someone from like Ohio who meets someone in New Jersey, who meets one of my family members in Pennsylvania. When they're all in the same room and I'm looking at how I know each person, like it just, I don't know.
Yeah.
It just makes me so excited. Like, oh my gosh, this world is not that small.
No, definitely not.
It is a small world. It's not that big.
Well, and I think it's funny too, like we recently had an experience with an event that we all did together where somebody was brought into that group, right? And realized that they lived in the same town as one of the other consultants that was part of the program, but they didn't even know each other. They got brought in, I think, through one of the rest of us. And now like, they're like, yeah, we live in the same town. They would have never connected otherwise.
Right.
But now can chat and connect and have conversation.
Yeah.
And I know collaboration is a big thing for you also. So, and I love collaboration. So how do you, because they can go wonky so quickly. So how do you kind of really figure out like, okay, this person is worth kind of taking to that next step? Or how do you know who you want to put more energy and attention into to kind of build deeper connections? Because I'm sure you're meeting lots of people all the time.
Right. And I guess that's a good question. There has to be equal or mostly equal. We both parties have to be receiving something and giving something. If I am the person who's doing all the work, like for example, we did a collaboration there were 4 direct sales companies represented: Sammy, myself, 2 other of our good friends from the Modern Direct Seller Academy. I feel like in school, elementary school, if there was a group project, we were the ones doing all the work. We were the ones like carrying everyone along. So now we're in this group, the 4 of us, the 4 maybe overachievers, workers, and we know that we want to be the one doing most of the work. So then you have 4 people doing so much work, but it doesn't feel like work because we get to all enjoy the benefits of our collaboration. So collaboration is huge, but it can't be just you doing everything.
No, I think that's true. I think the ease of knowing everybody's going to step up and bring their best to the plate. You don't have to ask. Like nobody has to say, we do say, well, who's going to do this? Who's going to do this? Mostly just to make sure we have everything covered. But it's never to be like, okay, like, Susan, are you going to step up to the plate here and like do something? Cause like we're dragging you along. So I think, and I think that's something that comes as you get older. Like, you don't feel the need to have, you can connect with a lot of people, have conversation, build authentic relationships, but you don't feel the need to have like deep connections with a ton of people, right? It's more important to have it with like that core group of people that you can trust and rely on that are going to have your back.
Yeah. And the people who are reaching out too, the people who want to be a part of that. I mean, you're not going to reach out to people who aren't interested because they're not interested. So it's a waste of everyone's time. So, yeah.
So what does that look like for your family? So you mentioned that you always have family dinner together. Like, how important is it for you to instill some of those values of kind of ways in which to connect with other people, how to be a good human? Like, how does that look in your household? Because some families are like super open, talk about everything. Some families, are more strict, quiet. Like, I don't want to have, just like you said, some families don't have family dinners together. So like, what does that look like for you guys?
Yeah, well, it's kind of a battle for me because, as you know, I'm very, I don't like to be attached to my technology. And we'll talk about that a little later too. So at the dinner table, one of my kids picks up their phone because it dings. And I'm like, like no phone at the dinner table. And my parents were here last weekend for over Mother's Day. They were visiting from Pennsylvania for a couple of days. And my mom had her phone down at the table. And I'm like, no. There's no phone at the table. And she was like, I just got yelled at by my youngest. Like, sorry. So I think, I hope, and we always teach our kids like eye contact. When someone's talking to you, you better not be looking at your phone. And I think, I see that in them now. And it's funny because now they're working. So I see them interact with their employer and with other employees. And they have good conversations, and they're getting good responsibilities too, because people are seeing, okay, this kid is not like, scrolling all the time. It really bothers me. Even if we're at the doctor's office in the waiting room, you're not in the waiting room with everyone else, but you're in the room waiting for the doctor. My daughter might be scrolling and I'm like, I don't want the doctor to come in and see you scrolling. Like, put it away. So it's a constant battle though, because, those phones are attached to myself and everyone. They're just everywhere.
Mm-hmm. They are. And I think there's a balance in learning how connection and conversations are changing. So like, I know for my kids, they're younger than yours, but still attached to their phones. And it's the group chats, it's the constant FaceTimes. Like I've noticed they don't make phone calls. So they're either doing quick little video chats on social media or like Snapchat or whatever, but everything is so much more visual in a different way. But I love the reminder of like eye contact, conversation, like paying attention, because I think that's just a respect thing when you're having a conversation with someone. But there's just, I think have to find that balance, and like, because sometimes it's easier to get your kids to communicate with you when you do just like send them a quick. Right. I always get a response. If I send a cringy like GIF or a photo of them as kids, like I always get responses. If I say like, hey, how was your day?
Right.
Nothing. But speaking of, you practice what you preach, because you alluded to this earlier, but you're in direct sales. Your business is largely on social media, yet you shut down for a full day every week.
Yeah. And I think that started, it was 2.5 years ago now. And I read a book called 24/6 by Tiffany Shlain. And it was about shutting off from all technology. Now she shuts off from like telephone, TV, GPS in her car. She is extreme. No technology for 24 hours. And the idea behind it is you need to give your brain a rest. And when you give your brain a full 24 hours of rest from technology and all the things, and you hear my phone going off, like I should have turned my phone off. But when you give your brain that rest, it allows it to be more creative. And, after the break, you think of things that you hadn't thought of before. So I'm like, okay, that is what I need. So from Friday night, 5 p.m. until Saturday night, 5 p.m., my phone is plugged in another room, out of sight. I do not go on my computer, so no email, no social media. I do have my phone set to receive messages from my kids, my parents, and my sister.
Right, your emergency contact type people,
down.
Yeah.
Yes. And it has been huge. There are some exceptions. Some things come up that, I can't avoid, but for the most part, and it's been 2.5 years. So everybody knows, Susan is on her tech break. So I'll have customers message me. I know you're on your tech break. I know you won't get back to me until Saturday night, but I didn't want to forget to tell you, blah, blah, blah. So, but it has been huge. It is something that I look forward to. Friday afternoons, I'm cramming to get everything done so that I can have peace and, just enjoy 24 hours of no social media, no tech. And I love it.
Does your whole family do it, or is it just you?
Sorry. I really tried. Now, my husband, he is a huge news junkie. Like that is how he relaxes. I have no idea how. He will sit there and watch news. So I made him do a news fast. So for 24 hours, so he'll watch soccer, he'll watch football, whatever season it is. He will turn off the TV for news. So that is his fast. The kids, I have tried. I'm like, come on, like 4 hours.
Well, on a Friday night,
No. We can play games. We can like go for a walk, and they won't even consider it. So maybe one day, but no, it's just me.
Well, that's hard. That's a rough age to do something like that. But I love because it's a lesson in we teach people how to treat us and we teach people boundaries. So it's the same, like whatever industry you're in, if you're always answering messages up until like right after people get them to you or emails or whatever, if you feel like you have to be on that hamster wheel, yeah, then people are going to expect you to do that. But, you've set an example, you've set a boundary, and people will respect those boundaries because they know they're not getting ignored. They just know Susan's, taking a break from her tech. So I love that. I think that's really smart.
Yeah. It's been huge.
Yeah. Well, and how long, because I think it's also about communication, right? Because you always post, you're constantly reminding people that you're taking the break. So it's not like you just disappear.
Right. Yeah. Every Friday at like 4:55, I have a scheduled post that goes out like, 24-hour tech break. See you tomorrow. Have a great weekend, whatever. So I think that does help for when people maybe want to reach out. But it's funny because like, my neighbor or someone else, they might text Mark to get a hold of me because they know I don't have my phone on. So I'm like, well,
that's
sorry,
amazing. So his phone blows up on Saturdays.
Personal secretary.
Well, hey, maybe you're onto something there. I don't know. I think if my husband was my secretary, we'd be in a whole lot of trouble.
Oh my gosh, yeah. He doesn't have time to be my secretary.
Yeah. I love that. Okay. Well, we always wrap up these conversations with 5 questions that we ask everybody. So before we jump into that, I just want to say, let this be your reminder too, to maybe just reach out to somebody and connect with them that you haven't talked to in a while. I know you've talked about that before in the past, just, check in on somebody and just say hi. Is that something that's also part of your like regular week or month?
Yeah. And, as being part of a church, when someone comes to your mind, like we take it as God saying, okay, you need to reach out to this person. I don't think it's a coincidence when things come to your mind. And then if you don't reach out and then later you find out, oh my gosh, that person fell or is in the hospital. Like that's why God put that person on my mind.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. So if someone comes to your mind and you hadn't thought about them in a long time, why not send them a message or call them? Because how special does that make you feel when someone's just like, hey, I was just thinking about you and, thought I'd send you a message.
Yeah, I love that. We did that at a fundraising training event. And my co-facilitator was like, okay, everybody, I just want you to get out your phone. I want you to go to the 8th text message that you've got. And I want you to just call that person and say hi and do it right now. So everybody did it. And then it was funny because some people didn't answer. And then we had one gal, her phone rang back right away. And she's like, is everything okay? Like, are you okay? It was like a family member she hadn't talked to in a really long time. So her family member assumed if you're calling me out of the blue on a random day, then like something must be wrong. Cause like you never call me, like what's going on? Right. So be careful. But yes, I do think reaching out is great. Okay.
Yes.
I've rambled on long enough. So where do you go for personal development or to keep learning?
You.
No.
You are one of my go-to people.
You are one of my go-to people.
I think we mentioned before the Modern Direct Seller Academy, and Becky and her husband Jeremy are amazing. I get so many ideas. They have so many trainings and resources. And so this is a plug for them. I have, built my own website and email marketing, and so much for business has come from the Modern Direct Seller Academy. So that's definitely number one. And, our relationship came from that. So
Yep.
just bonus after bonus.
We have a group chat on Facebook Messenger that is quite busy. And Becky was on this podcast also, so I'll link that episode up in the show notes, just talking about how she's kind of same with how you started, like evolved her career over time with changes in family, and now how her husband's in the business with her. So check that one out. Yep. Would you consider yourself introverted or extroverted?
So I think I'm extroverted with a security blanket. Like, I'm not going to go out and do things on my own. Like, I like to have my buddy with me, whether it's my husband or one of my kids, or, I'm okay, like, speaking in front of people, all of that, fine. But, and like I said before, I like to have people over. I like that social, but I always like to have my buddy with me.
Yeah, I agree with that. Like going to a networking event all by yourself would be a very uncomfortable situation. Yeah. But, walking into a church
there.
Right. It's totally fine. I think I'm that same way. I've never heard anybody explain it like that, but I think I might be like you. What's one thing on your goal list this year, either personal or professional?
So since my husband just came home, he said I'm an ambivert.
Oh.
An ambivert. A person whose personality has a balance of extrovert and introvert features. Okay.
Oh, I didn't know there was a term for that.
I didn't either. Thank you, Mark. He just came home.
I love it. Fact checking our podcast episode. Gotta love distractions. Okay, goal list. What's on your goal list?
Okay, so since we've just moved, oh my gosh, we've almost been here a year. And from the beginning, I was a part of an amazing networking group in Cincinnati, Ohio. It was very healthy. It was all about relationships. And that's why it was so good, because we met every other week, got to know each other, had different businesses. So when I had someone, one of my friends needs a realtor, I'm like, oh, Maria is your girl. Someone needs a travel agent. Okay, I know someone. No hesitation in referring people when there's a need. So I would love to duplicate that here. And I've been looking around, kind of stalking other business or networking groups, and haven't seen anything like it. So I really feel like it's my job to start something like that in this area. So I've said it out loud before and it hasn't happened because I'm still kind of afraid, but now I'm saying it on a podcast. So maybe that'll hold me accountable.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic. I love that. What is a piece of advice you've gotten from someone that has stuck with you?
So when Mark and I got married almost 24 years ago, our friend Steve Hill said, don't sweat the small stuff. And part 2 is it's all small stuff. Like really, everything comes and goes. There's times in your life where you're like, oh my gosh, how am I going to get through this? You get through it. Everything is the small stuff. So don't sweat it. That was really good advice. And then, to quote Clark Griswold from Christmas Vacation, and I say this all the time to my kids, it's all part of the experience. Like you have an adventure, something exciting is happening, but you have to wait, something bad happens. It's all part of the experience.
Does that help you just live in the moment more and be present? Like that reminder?
Probably, yeah. Because I love adventures. I love, something new. Traveling, I don't travel like all over the world, but I'll go to my parents' house they live 2 hours away. Like, okay, let's go for the day. Let's, I'm independent in that way. I just feel like life is one big adventure. Like this weekend, it's supposed to be, we live 5 minutes from Ocean City, New Jersey. There's supposed to be 100,000 people on the boardwalk this weekend. I have to take the kids to work. They work in the boardwalk. And I'm like, I kind of just want to go and sit on a bench and just experience.
People watch.
Yes. And everyone's like, no way. Like, I would never do that. And I'm like, why not? Like, so I do have another adventurous friend here. And she said, I would love to go with you. I'm like, okay, good.
I'm from a small town in Northwest Iowa, 2 hours away from where we live, tourist town. And same thing. Like Memorial Day is opening weekend, 4th of July is huge, and those are the weekends that we now don't go down. Like we go down on the off weeks and the off weekends so we can actually go out on the lake and, go hang out. We go down and we watch the fireworks from my dad's living room because we can see them across the lake, but we don't go down to where all that's happening because it's sheer chaos. So yeah, I mean, if you're going to be down there anyway, you might as well have the adventure and check it out.
A park like 2 miles away, but
I love that. What is a non-negotiable in your life?
So 2, 1 is the 24-hour tech break. Non-negotiable, as much as I can control, that is my 24 hours without my phone, computer. But another thing, and this I actually haven't been able to do lately, when I resigned as a speech therapist, trying to figure out a new schedule, Mark and I started walking in the morning because part of the reason I resigned is because we were not connecting like we should.
Mm-hmm.
We were so focused on work, the kids, we kind of, drifted apart from each other. So we started to walk every morning for an hour. And in the beginning, we both had our headphones on. I was listening to a book. He was listening to music. And we would be like, if someone had something to say, take out an ear, like, what? And then it was like, we would have like one earbud in and be like half listening. And now it's like, we're completely having a conversation about the kids, about church, about life, about, things that are upsetting us. And that time together has been huge for our marriage. So that's been like 5 years. Now, recently I've had my foot issue and I'm not allowed to walk. I'm actually in a boot. And I've missed it. I mean, it's been almost a month now that I have not been able to go for a walk with Mark. And, I feel it in our relationship. I feel it mentally. Like it's so good for me to walk for that hour every day. So right now I'm kind of struggling in that area, but hopefully we'll get the foot figured out and get back to walking.
So you did that for an hour every single morning?
We walk 5 miles every morning. We walk the boardwalk. It's 2.5 miles one way, turn around 2.5 miles the other way. So it's like an hour and 15 minutes.
Temporarily get yourself a motorized scooter and you guys can still
a little rascal.
Yeah. I mean,
yeah. And she said I could ride a bike, but it's not the same. I love walking.
Well, we'll send healing thoughts your way in hopes that all gets cleared up soon. But I do love that. I think that's a good practice and a good reminder. We have to constantly remind ourselves too. We try to do a little date night once a week and just go sit at a restaurant, have an appetizer, and just have conversation because we can leave the kids at home, But you have to, just like you said, remind yourself to call people. You have to remind yourself to prioritize that time.
Yeah,
for the relationships that matter.
Gone, we talked about that empty nest. Like,
you didn't want to talk about that. We shouldn't bring that up again. I don't want to end this podcast
with you.
We're going to end the podcast, and Susan is going to go into her bathroom and have a cry.
A moment.
That's what's going to happen. Well, I appreciate you coming on today and talking about connection because I think it's so important. And you are just my guiding light for reminding myself of all of those things and ways that we can be ourselves and show up in our businesses and in our families. So thank you for that. If people want to connect more with you, learn more about lemongrass, learn more, just hang out with you on social media, how do they do that?
Yeah, so I have my own website. It's susanlarimer.com. Super easy. And I'm on Facebook the same way. I have a lemongrass spa customer group called Lemongrass Love with Susan. And that's where I connect with my customers. But it's so much more than direct sales. It's a really nice community in there. So yeah, you can follow me there.
And we'll link everything up in the show notes at easystylewithsammy.com/22. Susan, thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, Sammy. My pleasure.
Real, authentic connection is so important to all facets of our life. And so I really want to thank Susan again for joining me today to talk through her process for connecting and why it has made such a big impact on her and in her life as well. It has been a huge impact on everything from my direct sales business to my marketing business to the connections that I've made with my clients and customers and just the way that I can engage with them in a real and authentic way. And that is why Susan and I have connected so well and gotten along so well. So thank you so much for taking time to listen to this episode. Make sure you subscribe wherever you stream your podcast or on our YouTube channel at Easy Style with Sammy so you don't miss out on a single episode. They come out every Thursday. And if you have somebody or you would love to share your story on this podcast, I'd love to interview you. So Sammy at easystylewithsammy.com. That's SAMI. I'd love to hear from you and feature you here on this podcast. For now, thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you in the next one.